Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. I'm not sure we're getting a dev blog this week, but I wanted to take a look at another deck build I've done. This one is for the 82nd Airborne. I feel like they're a division that sometimes gets very forgotten about. I think they are a little bit weak in the tank area, and that said, I think there's plenty of stuff to play with here, and obviously they are airborne, so there's plenty of forward deployable infantry. So let's have a look through the deck. I think right now, the only big issue they have is a serious lack of infantry ATGM without taking multiple cards. That is probably a big weakness in the current meta because of the ATGMs being so important. But we'll get to that in infantry. So, as always, you know, the sort of setup here is the M35 supply. It's the only one you get 10 of, and I like to be able to spread them out. Then we've gone for the Chinook here. It's got a lot of health, so it can get closest to the front lines and maybe take a hit, but be careful with it. 3,000 in there, 6,000 total with 2 of them. You can take the UH-60 supply, that has 1,000 and 6 of them, so 6,000 total. Same overall, but it obviously works out a lot cheaper to get the Chinook, because, well, 2 UH-60s is already 90 points, and that's only 2,000 supply, so there is, in this case, a very big difference in price. In terms of the command, Humvee, it's forward deployable. You do get 3 of the choppers, but the choppers are very risky. In team games and 10v10s, chance of them getting shot down is very high, especially in 10v10s. So you're better off going with the Humvee here, in my opinion. It's faster, and in team games, there's maybe sometimes benefit to getting to a point first. In 1v1s, definitely take it. Then again, in 1v1s, you might get away with the chopper as well. I leave that to you, but certainly a forward deployable command in a 1v1 can be very beneficial on some maps. Okay, infantry. Now, there's some units which are a lot better than others. So I've taken an airborne leader, just the Humvee variant, but they have a strength of 12, so they take a bit more punishment than a lot of the leaders. Again, if this was a 1v1 situation, maybe you'd be better off taking something in a chopper like the aero rifle leader. That could be more beneficial, I think, but as it stands, I don't see any real need for that in a team game or a 10v10. I think that's just a bit too risky. So I went with the airborne leader. Military police with the M67. As we know, the M67 is very good. There's no reason not to take it. The recoilless rifles still perform well, even though their pricing has been adjusted over the months and they're not quite as good as they once were. They're still good because they can hit vehicles and infantry. Plus, these guys have the military police trait, so a little bit of a bonus to troops around them in terms of lowering the cohesion, or speeding up the cohesion recovery, shall we say. Okay, now we're on to the ATGM bit. There's only one ATGM here, and that's the TOW2. It is airborne, it is forward deployable, it is not cheap, and you only get 3 per stack. 3 per card is not a lot of TOW2s, to be fair, and I've ended up taking 2 here. They're so strong right now, I feel you can't just take 1 card, because you lack in the tank area. So I think it's important to take 2, personally. Could you get away with 1? Yes. Could you get away with none? Depends on the map. I think if you're trying to cover a distance on a map, then really you want some TOW2s. And obviously the infantry, probably a little bit more survivable than the Jeeps and the Humvees, which we will get to in the tank tab. But yes, I've decided to take 2 of those. I've then taken the 40mm grenade launcher. I still prefer that at the moment to the machine guns, just because it does seem to do quite a lot of damage still. Obviously, it has a decent range there as well. Same range as the military police. So, just my long-range anti-infantry. Obviously, an issue here is they're long range, so they're not great up close, necessarily. You want these guys to be firing over a distance at incoming infantry if you can. Okay, fine. So this is my medium range section. Can you see how I've got this set up? Airborne, long range, medium range, close range. Airborne Dragons. The reason I've taken these guys is they're a big squad, and they have the Dragon 2 launcher. And the Dragon 2 launcher isn't bad. It has a good penetration. Not the most accurate thing ever, but For the fact they're a big squad, they can fight if you need them to. And they're good for sticking in buildings and things because of that dragon or, you know, the edge of a forest. It's a little addition to having the TOW2s there. Next up, Airborne Engineers Flash I've gone with. Obviously, right now, as we've discussed, Engineers penetration or damage is only 1 at the moment on the satchel charges. HE is 1. If it was 2, then I'd be more inclined to take them. They're still good if you can get them close enough, but you will just generally find that as soon as you run them at a sensible enemy, they're running their units away from you. So I've really gone off taking them. I think certain situations you might get away with it in a town, but they're so situational now. Longer range flamethrowers just surpass them. But, you know, they're still a big squad in terms of there's 10 of them. That's not bad. What I have opted for are 3 stacks of Airborne. They have the AT4, which is very good. They're a 10-man squad. They get 2 M60s. I think they're just a very good squad. Your alternative to that is the aero rifles. The problem being they only come in choppers. They're a 10-man squad. They're very similar. They've got a worse launcher. And they only come in choppers. Fast response in a 1v1 or a 2v2, maybe. But in a 10v10, if you try and get these near the front line, they're probably going to get shot down. That is the risk you would take. So, for bigger team games, which I generally play, they're not the ones I would take. Airborne Gunners, 7-man squad, have a law. They're not as good as the Airborne. The Airborne Dragons, we've already got some of those. They're okay. The Fireteam Dragons, they only come in a Humvee here. They are forward deployable, but then everything here is forward deployable. So what is the advantage to this? Nothing. They're a 5-man squad, and they're still 50 points. I'd rather pay 60 and get a 10-man squad. And the Fireteam AT4, exactly the same. They're a bit cheaper, but they're only a 5-man squad. So they're just a little bit lackluster. I don't know why you would take those over the Airborne, personally. But maybe there's a good reason. If you have a good reason, do let me know. I'm genuinely curious. Maybe there is a good reason to take these fire teams. I don't see it myself, I guess. I'd rather have a full squad that can actually take some punishment. Other than that, as I say, there's nothing too exciting here. The military police themselves, why would you take those when you can have the military police with the M67s? Anyhow, moving on to artillery. Not a lot of choice in the artillery tab. Not a lot of choice. I eventually went for 1 mortar. I think they're always handy to have in there because there are situations where you will use them. And then I went for the horrendous guns. Okay, they're not horrendous. I just really find them very lackluster in their damage output. But I've ended up bringing them in because they're cheap, basically. And cheap is good, yeah? So, those are in there. Tanks. Well, you're going to take the M1 IP, and you're going to rank it up. You only get 4 of them. That's it. You're going to take the Humvee TOW because, obviously, the TOWs are really good right now. Okay, the price is being put up slightly, but it's got a TOW2 launcher on it. And it's forward deployable. So if you can get in a good tree line with these, that's, you know, they're going to be a good deterrent for any long-range engagements. Now, I ummed and ahed for a long time here about the Sheridan. Whether I would take more Humvees or take the Sheridan. I decided in the end to take the Sheridan. The missile they have is obviously hot garbage. But they've got a gun. They're good for a little bit of harassment close-up. They just don't have any health is the issue, or any armor, I should say. So they're very easily popped. I think, again, it's situational how you would use these, but I think, you know, in a closer range environment, they're potentially helpful. What I should point out is they are high explosive anti-tank. They are not kinetic, so they don't increase in damage as they get closer. They just always do 14. Something to bear in mind. Command tank I didn't take here because, really, I don't think the Sheridan is worth it. I'd rather have the infantry commander in this deck. Recon, LRS, ground surveillance radar. I've taken some normal airborne scouts. They have the AT4 launcher here, which is nice, so they can kill vehicles. And obviously, I've taken them in the Humvee with recon option. does have a gun on as well, but it's more for the recon option. It just means that I've got 12 recon there instead of 6. Okay, it's not as good recon, but it, you know, every little helps. Some Bradleys, because they're still good. The TOW2 is good. Obviously, the autocannon is not as good as it was, so bear that in mind. But TOW2 is still good. And then I decided, after much deliberation, to take the Kiowa Warrior, because I had spare points at the end, and this just kind of fit in nicely. Could easily take the Scout there as well, and not take the Kiowa Warrior. The reason for the Kiowa Warrior was the Hellfires, to be honest. The standard Kiowa with the Hydras, there's only 14 on there. Not really fussy about that. I think of the choices, I'd either take the Scout or the Hellfire option with the Kiowa Warrior. Anti-air, again, not spoilt for choice here. Airborne Stingers, Avengers, and Airborne Stingers I went with in the end. I'll move that along there. The Airborne Stinger, you know, the Stingers are very good. They can be forward deployed here, which is a nice bonus. The Avengers are, again, you know, they're very mobile. They fire pretty fast. You know, the Stinger is only 6. These fire at 17 per minute. They also have the little gun, which is neither here nor there, to be honest. But, you know, they're not a bad unit at all. But they're not a chaparral. Let's be fair. They are not a chaparral. You do have the option of the chopper. I've seen some people using this semi-effectively, but I've never had a lot of luck with the anti-air choppers, I've got to be honest. So I tend not to take them. And, you know, again, in 10v10s, there's so much AA down usually. You can only really use them for defense most of the time. And then the Vulcan Cannon. I don't think the Vulcan Cannon is bad. What is bad about it is obviously it is radar, which makes it more accurate perhaps, but at the same time, it just means babysitting it. And I don't think it's worth babysitting a Vulcan Cannon, to be honest. They're not great against jets. They're great against helicopters at the moment. They really stun them down, but I'm still not finding these cannons, whatever you want to call them, the anti-air guns, they're not doing a lot of damage to jets still. Okay, simply, that's what I'd go with. You might fancy the Vulcan, I don't know. Helicopters, you've got a lot of room in this tab and a lot of decent helicopters, so you could build very helicopter heavy and just accept that you're going to pay a lot of activation points for it. I ummed for a while, and I decided I quite like the Apache rocket because it's got lots of Hydras and it's got ECM. I like the normal Apache because it's got the Hellfire missiles, some rockets, and it's got ECM. I then opted, completely ignoring what I previously said about anti-air choppers, for the AH-1F ATAS. The reason being is it has the gun, it has some Hydras, and it has the Stingers. And in my head, I'm thinking, what can I use this for? Why is it useful to me? Well, for any choppers that try to get round the back. So there's situations where enemies will try and get choppers round the back of the map, even in 10v10s. I'm looking at you, Tally. And being able to pop one of these out at any point on the map to very quickly respond to that is quite nice. It's a little bit more effective than some of the jets, because some of the jets are just too fast to catch choppers properly. Whereas this thing, it's going to go toe-to-toe with them. So that's why it's in there. You also get 4 of them on a card, which I think is quite nice. Just to give you a little bit extra. And then I went the standard Cobra for the Hydra rockets more than anything else. Everything here in my head is sort of designed defensively rather than to be aggressive. Being aggressive with choppers in 10v10s, if someone's got up a good air defense net, is really difficult. Unless you do it right off the bat in Helo Rush, which, you know, it's a bit of a cheap tactic, guys. I wouldn't recommend it. Once there's an established air defense there, it's very difficult to penetrate with lots of choppers, so I tend to use mine more defensively. Or in the case of the Apache, you know, maybe picking off a tank here and there if I can get close enough without losing it. But you've got to be very careful with these because they are expensive equipment. Aircraft. There's a lot of slots here that are quite cheap. And there's a lot of jets to choose from. However, it's missing a few important things. For example, there's no A10 anti-tank, which I think is a real shame. You're relying on the F-16 anti-tank, which isn't bad. But I do prefer the A10, I think. So, very simple. The F-15 Eagle. Going to be very helpful in team games, potentially 10v10s. 10v10s, it's always a bit of a mess, and there's so many aircraft around, but not bad. I've also opted to take the F4E Phantom, because it does have a long-range missile. It's it's quite a bit cheaper than the Eagle, and you get 4 of them on a card. I don't think it's a bad jet. I think I'd rather do that than take another set of F-15s. There's more situations I'll probably call that out. F-16 anti-tank, because we need anti-tank in this deck. There's no getting around that. We need anti-tank because our tank tab is pretty sparse. Seed, because we're going to need to utilize our aircraft at times, including the anti-tank. So we kind of need something that can maybe take out Seed, or take out radar units, I should say. And then the cluster bomber here. It is a cluster carpet bomber, the F111F. Very useful unit. Again, you're looking at killing columns of tanks or vehicles with this. Expensive, but effective. Then we've got the laser guided bomber. Laser guided bombers are very hit or miss. Literally hit or miss. Laser guided bombers to me should be darn accurate. Unfortunately, they tend to miss quite a bit. They're not ideal right now how they work. It's not like in Wargame Red Dragon where if you target somewhere with a laser guided bomber like the Nighthawk, those bombs are going to hit. And they're going to hit where you clicked. Generally speaking, it's very rare they don't. Whereas we're kind of in a situation here where they can miss. So, not perfect still at the moment, but getting better. And then the A10 rocket. I think any A10 is good. They're really good for killing choppers. The rockets are reasonably good at killing vehicles and infantry, obviously. Maybe not so good at taking out tanks, but you can still do damage to tanks. So that's why they're in there. And that's the deck. Napalm was a possibility, but you only get 4 bombs. Napalm isn't bad, by the way. It's just expensive for what it is usually. This is actually probably a little bit better priced than some of the ones that I've seen. But what do you guys think of this deck? What would you do differently? How would you build the infantry? Would you actually take the fire teams? I just can't see a reason to take them, I guess. And what would you take with the helos and aircraft in particular? Because I think there's potential to do a lot with these tabs, but I'm not sure what else I would jump on here other than what's already there. I mean, the HE bomber, the reason I didn't take it is because of the 227 kilogram bombs. They don't seem to do a huge amount at the moment. If you're going with bigger bombs, you're guaranteed to empty a building, but I don't always feel like the 227s do the job, if you see what I mean. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please do like, share, subscribe. I'll see you all soon for some more War Now.